Hey, hello everyone. My name is Charlie Youngs, and professor of National Gaoshan University of Science and Technology. And today we're discussing about the introduction of Maritime cluster and the port hinterland policy. Okay, here it's outline. So first one is define what is a Maritime cluster. Number two, picture of a Maritime cluster. Number three, evolution of our process of Maritime cluster, and number four, what makes policymaker for developing Maritime cluster. Number five, and the case study of Marine cluster and the port hinterland policy. Okay, for our audience to understand what is port hinterland areas, for example, here is show the map of Busan Port. Busan Port have a north container terminal and south container terminal and west container terminal. So, for example, we give the north container terminals. They have here is port areas, and also they have including at least port hinterland step up some North District Park, Phase 1 and Phase 2. So today we'd like to discussing what is the port hinterlands. Okay, so at first of one, and the definition of a maritime cluster. A maritime cluster, for example, according to the Porter, and they have arguments. They define the cluster as mean geography, concentration, and their interconnected companies and the institution and the particular area. So they for example, they say about this area just for some close place industry will step out together. So maritime cluster, that means they will establish some related maritime firms together, so they can change their human being, capital, and finance is this area. Okay, so number two, of course, they have some also give a defines what is a maritime cluster, including the naturally cause the correction of different type of maritime activity are for the benefits. And the maritime cluster is also have function entities in which areas for various industry, for example, shipping, maritime sector, and so on. Maritime cluster consists of quite large groups stakeholders, so they divide into different sectors. Okay, here is number two, our picture of maritime cluster. You can see the these circles. They have a show up some related industry, including the port, shipping, maritime, and domestic navigation, navy, coastal industry, construction, fishing, yard, and so on. Okay, composition of maritime service cluster. So including the first one is shipping. So and ship owner chartering. Chartering means they have to charter some ship for their transport their cargo. Intermediate service, including some insurance, broker, finance. Bring governance regulation, including the IMO, International Maritime Organization. Support service, including some consultant and some mediators and some industry association. So activity of maritime cluster, so a very wide range. First one, we have defined what is the core activity. For example, including shipping, building, marine equipment. Number two, marine related activity, education, finance, broker. So how about function? Function is including the transport, service, operation, manufacturing, resource exploration, public sector, leisure and tourism, and research. So emergence of a maritime cluster, so including they have shown some four criteria. First one, critical mass existing of several maritime economics activity, and present research training, so the other sport infrastructure, including the human beings, education and trainings, the potential of developments in the future. Okay, so Maritime cluster have structure and goals. So of course, the different areas they have different goals. For example, some European cluster has been to look at the global competitiveness and provide platform the linked national maritime labor strategy interest to their governments are in economic development. How about the actual economics? That's very nature, evolution, triple. So industry just got some benefit or support by their government. So how about the benefit cluster? They create some competitiveness of advantage by facilitating the mutual benefit relationship between the company in this cluster. And also the maritime cluster, because they have a join together, so they can share their knowledge and sometimes exchange their capital and to share knowledge and best practice for their future. And also the leading the board's business and environment benefit, including high income and employees levels, so including their markets. Okay, here's some also have to show this WJ and SOT and show their benefit of maritime cluster summaries. So there's how to get their benefits and to support their maritime cluster, and they improve their international competitiveness. Okay, so evolution of process of maritime cluster. Okay, maritime cluster, of course, they have developed step by step. So maritime cluster sometimes in most cases development for point production. So this early age, the maritime cluster, finance service, and the shipping management hub. So they can create the different center, for example, including the technologies center, service center, and the research innovation orient ecosystem. Okay, so the another also have identified the three type of cluster evolution, including incremental change. So that means innovate their better, and of course including the diversified and the radical change, so including the improve their technology cluster. Okay, so and also another also have four cluster evolution, including maturity, decline, adaptation, and then reuse and transport. Okay, here is to show you maritime cluster classification. They have they show type 1, type 2, type 3, and type 4. So they also including the scope of activity, the difference type. They have a difference their service here. So how to constructing a cluster? Yeah. The limitation of cluster, so it's the nature. So you have some areas to save the function. First one, constructing the cluster generates start by selecting cluster core. Number two, that means you have a strength linkage of a core with related organization is analysis. Three, that means relevant cluster region delimit. Number four, that's cluster population defined business unit, so associate the public or the organization strongly linked together and to core activity. Also, you can see the center is cluster core, and let's have some functions together. So they have some function border. Okay, here is just a maritime cluster in the world. You can see Rotterdam, the biggest European ports, account for 60% of inland water transport. And also they have some Norway, London, that's birthplace of marine insurance and classification society. Greece, that means biggest European port for cruise and constellation ships. Singapore, concentration of trade and financial business in Asia, and Bangladesh. So you can see the different areas. They have different core cluster. So also they have show another, that means this port by the government, Hong Kong, Philippines, and have bomb buildings, organizations, registration, operations, scrappings. Okay, so you can For example, building, that means Korea and Japan and China is very important. Scrapping, including the India, Bangladesh, China, and Pakistan. Okay, here is strength and disadvantage. Of course, not all the clusters to say about. You can guess a lot of benefits. So, for example, the Hong Kong poor competition for mainland China and the cluster being inhibited by the governments. Okay, so of course the London's the balance of shipping business now exists to their Far East, and high poverty on salary cost because their salary is very core compared with Asia country. Or transport infrastructure and unfavorable UK tax or insufficient support by government. So this table, you can see the different companies, different policy, they have mixed different problem. Okay, here is to show you maritime advantage. So show you different areas, port, harbors, including the port, and financial service, ship legislation. Also, they mix some cluster to save out together. Okay, so my name is Yi-Chih, and today we'd like to share just what is the port hinterland and the port hinterland policy. Of course, they have in the list. You have the first one, you have save out some pro cluster, and the final one, that means how to use the government policy to support this area to create more competitiveness advantage in the future. Yes, thank you. You're listening. And if you have any comments, please send a mail to me, and of course. And thank you. You're listening. Bye bye.